All right, we are live. And on today's episode, I interview a coach and entrepreneur. Profound loss returned him to his truest self. He now helps leaders find and lead from a place that is theirs with the ride in. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Antonio Lennert.
Thanks, Derek. It's an honor to be here and such an honor to reconnect with you after so many years.
Yeah, we first connected over a decade ago in the jungles of Costa Rica in Nosara doing yoga teacher training at the Nosara Yoga Institute with Amba and Don Stapleton. And yeah, it's been amazing watching all you've been doing since that time in your personal and professional life online. And I'm really excited to talk with you here and explore your incredible hero's journey that brought you to now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when you reached out to me about getting on your podcast. I was so honored, and like we haven't talked much since then, right? Like we've been following each other's journey from apart.
Yeah.
But I feel like that moment in Nosara, those 30 days that we spent, collectively co-creating, learning about yoga, learning about ourselves, was such an important time for everyone. Like I'm
Yeah.
still connected with quite a few people there, and so much has shifted for all of us, right? So when you reached
Hmm.
out, it's like, wow, this is amazing. I get an opportunity to actually, dive into whatever happened to him and share what happened to me in the last 10 years since we went through that really intense, profound, like almost divine experience in the jungle.
Oh, absolutely, like a life-changing experience, and it's like it seems just like yesterday, like the bond it creates. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. It seems just yesterday that you were giving me, Marina, and Sana like surf lessons on the beach, and my first surf lesson.
Yeah, it's wild, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing, man. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah, so these conversations are like generally a very positive conversation designed to uplift, inspire, and empower everyone tuning in just to move forward with greater faith and trust in themselves on their hero's journey ahead. And this first question sets us up as such, and that is, Antonio, what do you love about your personal world right now? Not about what's going on in the outside world, but what do you love about your life right now?
That's an excellent question. Man, I feel like I have finally arrived at a place of truth where like I know exactly who I am. I know I still have a ton of work to do, and there will always be internal work to do, but I just feel so comfortable in my own skin. Like I feel like I'm living the exact life I was supposed to be living. I feel like I'm living accordingly to my values. I have found my mission, my purpose, and I feel like everything around me is a reflection of this internal compass that I have found that is attracting all the right things right now. So I can safely say that this is my best moment so far since I was born.
Incredible. So that's the follow-up question I generally ask after my first question, and that pertains to your mission. So I'm glad you talked about you knowing your mission now. So what is that mission? Your light that guides you in all that you do, both professionally and personally. Your personal mission. What is that, Antonio?
Yeah, so my mission is to help leaders, to help other people, to help entrepreneurs, to become better version of themselves, to go through a similar process of self-discovery that I went through in their own way, so that they can lead from a place of self-leadership. And through that, they can have a broader impact in their teams, in their family, in their communities. And I feel like that's my contribution to the world now. It's to have this one-on-one or, this deep work with a few people at a time. And hopefully I can create a space in which something can shift for them, that positive change can permeate into different areas of their lives.
Hmm. And what are the foundational values to that mission?
That's an excellent question. I think one's integrity.
Hmm.
That's one of my most important values. Authenticity. So everyone else is taken already. The only person you can be is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can I find myself there and really lead from that place of authenticity?
Mm-hmm.
And healing. I think we all have wounds, so you know stopping the avoidance or stopping the pretending that I don't have anything to heal, that everything is okay. Because when I heal myself, I heal the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I would say, doing good. You know, how can we keep showing up for those around us, and keep injecting positivity and good things into this world.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you're in a place today where you know who you are. How would you describe that? Who are you?
Hmm. I am a very grounded person, very intuitive, very loyal. I am many things, when it comes to my capabilities, my skills. I have done a lot of things. I've been a designer, I've been a yoga teacher, I've been a meditation practitioner. I've founded business, I've closed businesses. I am a coach. I am a surfer. I am a runner. I am the guy who belongs to nature. Um, I am a great friend. I am a very loyal family member as well. I really nurture the family I have, not only the family that I was born in, but the family I have chosen
Mm-hmm.
as my close friends. So I'm a pretty multifaceted guy, but I feel like these are some of the qualities that I embody right now.
Yeah, and what incredible qualities that have enabled you to be the leader that you are and to show up the way you do. And one of the primary ways you're currently serving, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is through the ride-in, which you've created. And can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. So the Right In is my leadership coaching business. I have been doing this for about 3 years now, under my personal name, and finally last year in November was when I fully put my head down and really envisioned what this business was going to be like, what this practice was going to be like. So it's in a way my second act. You know some of my story. We'll probably dive into it a little bit later.
Yeah.
I have built a few amazing things. I had a major um, trauma that happened in my life that shifted the course of my entire life, and the
Mm-hmm.
right end is the result of my healing, of really going in and really processing that loss, going through that grieving process, to emerge in a way that I can now offer a similar platform for other people to reassess who they are, to reinvent themselves, to really heal parts of themselves that they're yet to heal.
Mm-hmm. So, I really appreciate your openness, the saying that there is some trauma, some struggle, some success, some failures, like the highs and lows of your journey has brought you to where you are now, to creating the ride in, to coaching these past 3 years, and the success you're flourishing right now. And so often when people look at what's going around, especially on social media, they see these people doing amazing things, and then they think, well, like, how could I do that? Like, I'm just here. But when we really get to learn people's stories on they got to where they are, whether that as an author, a coach, an entrepreneur, we see that we're all on the same path. We're all going through similar, if not the same stuff. And it makes us realize that anything is possible. The only thing limiting ourselves is ourselves, and getting in our own way. So let's hit rewind. Let's take a journey back in time to see how you got here. And you can start where is most fitting for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started in Nosara. It definitely started in Costa Rica. It was a few years before Nosara, my first time in Costa Rica, and I went to a surf and yoga retreat. And that was the
Hmm.
first time in my life that I retreated, that I gave myself permission to just be there. I remember I left my phone in Toronto. Like, I didn't even bring my phone on that trip. And I was
Wow.
at an in Montezuma, and whole week practicing yoga, surfing at sunrise, meditating, and it was the first time that I felt one with myself and with the natural world that I was surrounded by. And there were about 30 people just like me, coming from New York, from LA, from all these, fast-paced cities, finding similar purposes there. So that's where it started to shift. And it was when we did our yoga teacher training in Nosara that I really leaned into, whatever I needed to learn about myself. I was dealing with a burnout from, working. I had a design firm here in Toronto for a few
Hmm.
years. Working really hard, trying to make it in a big city. Found success in some ways, but in other ways, something was missing, and it led to burnout. And me going to a teacher training was a gift to myself, to allow myself to go there and learn those yoga teachings. And I didn't know, like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to teach yoga, or I gave myself the opportunity to go through that process to learn about myself. And I think it was the best possible place to go to, because the way Don and Amba taught us, like, yeah, there was all the yoga content, but it was about finding our voice. It was about finding the teacher within, right? And it
Hmm.
was through that I actually learned to trust my gut, to trust my intuition, to trust that all my answers were within. So when I came back from that, I was already teaching you guys how to surf in Nosara in between yoga trainings that we had. So when I came back, I really put my head down and I worked on Surf the Grades for over a decade,
Yeah.
which was it was a surf shop. It was a surf school. So we taught people how to surf on the Great Lakes right here in Toronto. And it sort of turned it into a bit of a movement. There are a lot of things that we did that really pushed the envelope a little bit in surf culture, especially in Canadian surf culture. It was a thing before, but I think we shifted things a little bit, especially being a queer surfer. There weren't that many queer owned and operated surf shops in the world before Surf the Greats. So that was kind of like, I would say, the first time I found my purpose was after Nosara and was with Surf the Greats. And I lived and I embodied that lifestyle here for nearly, yeah, it was 11 years, which was a
Hmm.
pretty powerful time to invest yourself in something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it must have been difficult to turn the page on another chapter after being involved in that for 11 years. And then you've also had experience turning the page on a new chapter from the design firm that was you were finding success in prior to going to Nosara. So yeah, like through those two experiences, and maybe there's more in the future. Like, what have you learned about letting go of a project and endeavor you've spent so much like blood, sweat, and tears and effort in to move on to something greater, better?
Yeah, I think that's really it's a very difficult thing to come to terms with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of ways, we're programmed to think that we have one purpose in life, right? Like, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
find that, we're gonna stay with it until the day we die, or maybe until the day we retire, and then we do something else that it's a little bit more purposeful or whatnot. And what I have found, especially for myself as a creative, dynamic person, is that I change, right? Like I evolve, the same way that I'm evolving internally, my interests might change over time, and with that, the more I evolve, perhaps, what I really want to do might change as well. And the first time I pivoted, it was a big struggle because, the designer persona was one that I had created when I was a teenager, and that was my dream, right? My dream was to, I wanted to live in New York or in London or in LA. I wanted to have my own graphic design firm. And I achieved that in Toronto, by the age of 27. And a couple of years into it, I asked myself, and so what? What's next? And when I looked around, I was like, all right, is this really what I set out to do this whole time? Like it's, there is more to life. And I think that was, it was that question that led to me wanting to see if there was something else. And there was, right? So when I found that purpose about, shifting a little bit of the status quo in the surf industry, in the surf community, something that was a part of who I was since I was a kid, that I had to go away from, because when I became a teenager, I realized I was different, I realized I was into guys. There wasn't a place for me in surfing, right? And through that process, I found an opportunity to actually find my place in surfing again. And not only that, to show a lot of people like me, other visible minorities, that they too belong in surfing. There is a place for them there. And that filled my life with purpose. That filled my heart. Like every morning I would wake up, I was like, right, this is my battle, this is what I'm doing. And a few years after that I started to notice a lot of things shifting in the surfing industry. There were, queer groups popping up all over the world. And it's beautiful, and I'm not giving myself credit for any of that, but I would like to think that I contributed a little bit towards, putting a little bit of positivity there. And things were going amazing, actually, with the surf business. We, just before the pandemic, we were flying. I was running the business with my late husband, who was, we co-created that whole business. We were nurturing that community together. He had his own profession, but he was doing that with me. And we were flying, we had plans to open shops in Halifax, in Vancouver. We had all this fully subscribed surf camps to, Peru and Nicaragua and Brazil. And then the pandemic hit. And the pandemic was an extremely difficult time for everyone globally, right? Like for everyone in our generation, the generations that are alive now, we all went through something really eye-opening and really challenging through the pandemic. And that was the first, punch in the gut. I was about, I think, 8 years into the business then. So we had to survive the pandemic, and we did just like everyone else survived with their businesses, with whatever they were doing in their lives. But then a year into the pandemic, I had another punch in my gut, which was Lucas, my late husband, was diagnosed with a very rare type of cancer. And he died within 6 months from that diagnosis. So that was like the moment in my life, since I was born, that, everything was going amazing in my life. I knew exactly who I was. I had my sense of purpose. I was doing the work that I was proud of. And then I was punched in the gut, and then at the same time somebody pulled the rug from underneath me. And I found myself, head down, face down in the arena, in the lowest point of my life.
I'm sorry for that loss. And as we talked about before that call, it's something that I've experienced as well, not to the extent of you, but grief is something that I feel everyone will have to deal with at some point in their life. What did you learn about grief through that process?
Mm. Yeah, I think to your point first, to the not to the extent that you experience, I think grief is grief. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter, who passes away. It doesn't matter if it's a friendship that stops serving its purpose. It doesn't matter if, moving to a new country and leaving behind a life, having to grieve your life. Like grief is grief. One is not
Mm,
harder than the other. It's part of the human
yeah.
experience. So I think I like to normalize grief as, it's hard. It's something that we all go through in different ways at different
Mm,
times in our lives. Um, what I have learned is that it's part of the cycle. It's part of life, right? The same way
mm,
that we plant seeds and they turn into beautiful plants and flowers. In fall they might die, and they might not come back if they're not perennials, right? And that's
mm,
okay, so I have learned that grief is just part of the natural cycle of life. We will go through it several times in our lifetime for many different things, uh, and what I learned that is very important for me to process grief and to keep flowing and moving forward
mm,
is to create space for that grief, to honor that grief. Because if something really important mattered to you, if there was love, and then when you lose that there is grief, it's because that love really existed, right? So the same way
mm,
that you celebrated that you held on to that love, you need to hold on to that grief. You need to feel all the things that grief is providing you, because those are all learnings, right? That's what's going to make you stronger, and that's what's going to open the space for you to have another love, or to have something else show up in your life. And I see a lot of people who go through traumatic experiences, who lose a sibling, who lose a parent, who lose a loved one, and who push that grief away, for years, sometimes their entire life. And you see the grief manifesting in every single interaction that they have with those around them. You see the anger that wasn't processed. You see that scream that was never let out. You see the tears that are still inside them. So, what I learned from grief, it's part of life. It needs to be honored, and the only way through it is through it. There is no avoiding, there is no bypassing, there is no expediting, and there is no shortcut around it. You just gotta go through it, sit with it in your own way.
mm. Wow, thank you for sharing that. That was so well spoken and really resonated with me deeply. I have more questions about this. I want to just pull the thread a little more. Um, how did you come to this recognition and this realization when you found yourself face down in the arena? What did that process look like for yourself?
Hmm. It was the hardest thing of my life. It was the hardest moment of my life, because I have always been the one holding space for those around me. Like here we had created and nurtured like this beautiful, strong community. And being a leader, being at the forefront of community, having a team, having, all these people who look up to you and who are grateful for, what you're providing them. Sometimes it doesn't give you permission to falter, or I didn't feel like I could falter. I didn't feel like, you know, at that moment I could actually be face down on the arena. But I had no choice, that was the only place I could be, and I just had to curl into a little ball and cry myself to sleep for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I also realized during that time is that when you impact other people's lives and those people care about you, when you are in that place of vulnerability, the most unexpected people will show up at your door, will call you, will text you, will bring you food. They'll do whatever they think they need to do to offer you some support, to help you get yourself back up. And that became very clear, the day it happened. I was flooded with messages. My doorbell wouldn't stop ringing. People dropping off food and flowers, and people checking in. What do you need? What I can do for you? So what I had to do, what I had to learn, was to actually, for the first time of my life, accept that help. To accept that I was in a situation in which I couldn't hold space for anyone. I could barely hold space for myself. And I could all I could do was to allow myself to be held, to be carried, and that I just had to go through that process. I had to allow the process to unfold in whichever way it was going to unfold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how long did that take? And is it still continuing to unfold today?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the process started even before he passed, when we knew what the outcome would be. I already started mourning, and I worked on that with my therapist quite a bit in preparation for his departure, just beginning to grieve, beginning to accept that there was a rupture that was going to happen. And so it started even before the actual loss, and it took time. Like it took a few years, and it's not. The other thing I learned is that it's not this perfect graph that just keeps going up, right? It's like, honestly, like it was like this, and then this, and then this, and this, like a little, some mid highs, and then some huge lows, and then I would get a little bit higher, and maybe the next low wasn't as low, but it was so cyclical. And it's been 5 years now, but to this date, I consider myself very healed from that loss. I have now all that's left is love and praise and beautiful memories, and I can look back at everything with a big smile on my face. Just gratitude for having lived that and having had that experience and having learned from that. But there are still things that happen that might come out of nowhere. Maybe I'm facilitating a workshop. There's a lot of vulnerability. Someone shares something very personal about their loss that deeply connects with me, and tears, start coming down, and I'm like, oh wow, there's still stuff there that hasn't been fully processed, and I think that will probably be, part of who I am for the rest of my life. I think, these things will take time. I don't think grief never fully goes away. Like it's just, it changes your relationship with the subject, right? With the memory, with the love, with what stayed in you.
You mentioned like a few of the tools that help you navigate these rough waters. Was community. Community was a big part, and your therapist. What were some other self-care tools that helped you navigate this loss and this grieving process?
Yeah, there's quite a lot that I changed there. One, I accepted that I needed my space and I needed my silence. So I actually, I allowed the right people in at the right times, but I spent a lot of time on my own, at home, out in nature as well. The first thing I did as part of my healing journey was Lucas and I had gone, we used to have a camper van, And the summer previous to his passing, we went on a 2-week trip through Ontario along Lake Superior, so all the way to Thunder Bay.
Hmm.
So I actually did that trip again on my own.
Wow.
Uh, and that was really hard. And that whole part of Ontario is really powerful. Like there's a lot of meaning for me there. Like I've always loved to go there. There aren't many people. It's so raw. The waves are amazing on Lake Superior when they're there. There's a certain vastness, just the sheer scale of everything is much bigger. But the most important thing is that there's a lot of indigenous communities and wisdom there, and I
Hmm.
really connect to that energy and to that way of life. And I was actually somebody gave me a book called "The Smell of Roses in the Rain," the smell of dust in the rain,
Hmm.
grief and praise by Martin Kretschel, and he's an indigenous leader, an elderly, and that was I read all the books that people gave me, to try to expedite to get my analytical mind to, let's look at psychology and figure out everything that I need to do in terms of, the all the stages of grief and whatnot, but that was the one book that really resonated because it was this indigenous wisdom really showing me that I had to live with that. And I took the book with me, and it became my Bible. And I remember days like driving for like 6-8 hours, bawling, and then a song would come on, and I would sing, out loud, and then I would start laughing. And I remember, the book telling me to celebrate the love in the way that felt natural. And I remember, being on the shore of Lake Superior in the middle of nowhere by myself under the stars, like dancing and screaming around naked, howling at the moon. Like I did everything that I felt that I needed to do to process that, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, there are a few other things. I continued with my therapist religiously, sometimes 3 times a week. I started working with a mindset coach at some point, and she really helped me look at my healing from a completely different perspective as my therapist. And I also, I'm a very spiritual person. I practice, a Brazilian religion called Umbanda, which is a mix of African shamanism and indigenous Brazilian shamanism. So I lean into that pretty aggressively. My brother is a shaman for that, so that him and I did a lot of work. And through that, I finally allowed myself to come in contact with ayahuasca, which is a plant that has been around me my whole life, being born and raised in Brazil, right? But I've always had so much respect for this plant, and almost like avoidance. I'm like, I'm not ready for you. I know whatever is gonna happen when we meet is gonna be profound.
Hmm.
And I finally gave in. I listened to the calling and I answered, and I went into my first ceremony. And I would say from since the loss up to now, that has been the most impactful thing that I did. It was starting this journey with ayahuasca.
Mm. Ayahuasca has been a big tool on my journey as well. First, processing the trauma from my traumatic brain injury, and then also the loss of my former partner. It's been a great tool, but I don't know if I would recommend it for everyone. Psychedelics beyond ayahuasca have been a great tool for me, but I believe they can be misused and need to be used with intentionality and carefully. What's your view um, on yeah the use of ayahuasca and psychedelics for the general populace, as these are becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Derek. I think it's, a lot of people use this substances, this plants, whether it's ayahuasca, mushrooms, whatever it is, as recreationally disguised as healing,
Hmm.
and I think that's very dangerous. I fully agree with you that it's not for everyone. I remember first time I did ayahuasca that I went to this shaman in Brazil in the jungle. I was still taking antidepressants. I had been on antidepressants for 21 years.
Hmm.
And I spoke to my psychiatrist, I spoke to my doctor about it. He had some hesitations, but he was like, if this is something that you really want to do, we're going to get you off the medication a couple of days before you go into the ceremony, and then you can start again afterwards because it can be really dangerous. Like, I have read about people who have psychotic episodes when, if they're taking a substance like that and they go into a ceremony. Sometimes they lie in the form, they say that they're not taking anything, and then they end
Yeah,
up putting the whole ceremony, putting the shaman, the people who are holding that container at risk, because now they're
yeah,
having to deal with someone having a breakdown, psychotic episode. So it's something very serious that should be done. If you're going to do it, you need to make sure that you're ready for it. Clear with your doctor. Have an open conversation with the shaman wherever you're going. Make sure it's a shaman to start
yeah,
off with.
exactly.
Okay? Not someone who got a hold of some ayahuasca and is holding ceremonies at an apartment in Toronto, because they believe that they have the capacity to hold space. So, yeah, and I think, but the most important thing is like, have the utmost respect for the plant because it's been around for thousands of years. It's used in a sacred way. Like, you will know when you are ready to come in contact with this plant, and you be called to the right place. So I think, when you feel 100% sure and you put everything in place, if that's what you want to do, that's how you do it responsibly.
Yeah, well said. So, Lucas, he passed away 5 years ago, and you've kind of talked about your grieving process, how you've picked yourself up from that. Yeah, so let's pick the story back up now. So, Surf the Greats, you put that, like you put that aside and you moved on. I like in during this time during COVID. Yeah, so let's pick back up the story from where we were.
Yeah, so I held on to Surf the Greats for quite a few years after the loss,
Hmm.
out of fear, right? Because that was my identity. That was who I thought I was. That was the purpose that I thought I had, and I was afraid of letting go. I really, like, it took me a few years to actually process it and to really find myself again and to give myself permission to reinvent myself, to go deep and to really look at what I needed for myself, and in a way, like, the metaphor I've used a few times is, I feel like I carried a dead business with me for many years that it was just holding me back. Like, I think
Hmm.
that business died when Lucas died. But out of fear, I tried to keep it alive and carry it with me wherever I went. And when I finally accepted that it had its place, it had its time, and perhaps there was something else there for me, I gave myself permission to really be something else. And what I found through that process wasn't that, this something else wasn't anything new. It was just like I had finally reconnected with like this deep version of myself that had been dormant all these years, right? That I had suppressed, that finally had a way of coming through. And that's how, I had this rebirth, reinvention, whatever you want to call it, and, started coaching and really found my new purpose. Is this my purpose for the rest of my life? I don't know, but it feels like it's where I should be right now.
Yeah, and I feel that's something so many people are searching for is finding their purpose. How would you advise someone, your clients, in this phase of their life, in this season of their life, who are searching for that purpose or for that new purpose? Like, what is the process?
Well, I think it all starts with a deep dive inwards, right? Like you really gotta like go in. You're not gonna find it outside. Your purpose is definitely within. There might be a lot that you have to unpack until you can get close to that purpose. You probably have to look at your belief systems. You have to look at your values. You might uncover some little T trauma that you work on. You might uncover some big T trauma that you work on. But I think it's only facing all of those things and really looking at your composition, like what made me into who I really am, that you are going to start to peel off those layers and really hone in, find that clarity into who am I really, after I'm able to separate all these things that have happened to me, that have shaped me into who I am, that have hardwired my behavior. So I wish I could tell people that it's something that they could do overnight. There is a formula, but it's a process, and it's a process inwardly. It's not outside.
What would be some steps on going inward? Like, where to begin?
Excellent question. Well, I think you can start, meditation is probably the best starting point.
Yeah.
To me, that has been my greatest tool for self-awareness. So since I started on my meditation journey 15 years ago, I have become so self-aware. Like I can stop wherever I am, in any situation I am. I can take a few deep breaths and I can go in and I can notice exactly what's happening, and I know where it's coming from. I know what I'm feeling. So I think that's to me, that's the starting point. Whatever type of meditation you want to get into. And even before that, I feel like a lot of people still have this aversion to meditation, or they avoid meditation because they think that it's not for them. Oh, I'm too hyper. Oh, I can't stop my thoughts. Oh, I can't find my nirvana. I was like, yeah, of course not. You're not a Buddha. You're not a monk. Meditating 12 hours a day. What meditation really is just a tool for us to train presence, to practice presence, right? Like we just train the mind to calm down and to be able to focus on different things at a time. And when we accept that, there's something beautiful that happens with that surrender. Like it's you start to notice the shift. So I'd say, yeah, first thing, meditation. I think honestly today we have access to so much information. So there are so many amazing books out there that you can read. I think wellness, self-development, professional development, There are so many things that you can learn. If you don't like reading, you can listen to them on audiobooks. You can find the podcasts of those authors and listen to their ideas as you're cooking, as you're driving. So a way to start getting exposed to different frameworks, different ways of looking at yourself and what you might be going through. And I think committing to the work, whether you see a therapist, if you have like some deep trauma that you need to work through, it's painful, it's not fun, but it's so healing. Like there's so much potential on the other side and through that process as well. And working with a coach, there are so many coaches out there that specialize in so many different things. Try working with a coach for a little while, maybe try someone else afterwards. I think there are many things that you can do, but it all starts with you. It's realizing, I want to change. There are things about me that I want to change. I want to become a better version of myself, and I'm gonna start making that a priority, and I'm gonna try different things, and I'm gonna accept that this is a lifelong journey. It's not something that I'm gonna do for 3 months and then I'm fully healed, I know exactly who I am, and I can just move on with my life.
A couple things I feel get in the way of that. One primarily is fear. How has your relationship with fear evolved in time?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot that has stopped me before, from changing, from actually wanting to shift my state was fear, the fear of letting go of many things, right? I think I still feel fear, but I think now I am very quick at recognizing the fear when it's there, right? And like I've done a lot of parts work, like IFS work.
Yeah.
So I have gotten to know my protectors, my firefighters, those parts that act from a place of fear. And whenever I feel the fear, I know they're there, but they don't take over anymore. Like I can actually have a conversation with them and say, all right, I see you, you want to protect me. The fear is real, but let's figure this out together. Let's look at last time we felt this. How did we get past that? What was our decision making process and what came out of it? So the fear is part of life. It's part of that decision making, but it doesn't paralyze me anymore. Now, I know that it's there, but I can overcome that fear by looking at all my victories, all the wins, all the times in which I overcame that fear, and I know I can do it again.
Yes, you can, and yes, we can. I feel another thing that gets in the way is author Stephen Pressfield. He calls it resistance. And that is that negative force within that keeps us from fulfilling our dreams. Another way to explain this, I think it's like our small S self preventing us from evolving and surrendering, returning to our highest self. And it's trying to keep us safe. Because when we start to change the way we do things, we step into the unknown. We step into an unfamiliar world where we don't know the outcomes. So often people stay in the familiar known, even if that familiar known is not great, but they know what the next day is going to look. But when we start to change systems, ideologies, beliefs, careers, we have no idea what's going to be around the next corner. And then so this resistance is the thing that tells you oh yeah, don't journal, or don't sit down on that meditation cushion, or don't see the therapist, or yeah, don't step on your yoga mat. It is trying to keep you in your safe, known world. Um, so yeah, what have been your strategies at overcoming kind of that internal voice trying to keep us in our familiar known, whether rather than venturing, like taking that leap into the complete unknown where is no predictability?
Hmm. Yeah, I fully agree with you and with this author because it's that fear, it's that resistance that we're safe as we are now. Yeah, there are a few things that aren't quite right, but this is very familiar. This is very comfortable. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna stay here because this feels it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And I
yeah.
don't know. The moment I start to allow myself to, these feelings to surface, I might open up a whole box of feelings and things that I'm gonna have to deal with. And it'll probably be painful. It'll probably take a while. But what I have learned, and I think this is what this grieving process really taught me, is like going through that process, surrendering to this process of really unpacking what I need to unpack brings such positive results afterwards. The things that I learned about myself when I start to unpack these things, as uncomfortable as they are, sometimes I'll have a coaching session and I'll sit with something super heavy for 2 weeks and it's so difficult. But as I sit with that, I'm actually renegotiating how I see that, right? Like I'm learning to cope with that. I'm healing that part. And once that's healed, then there is potential, right? So there is
Hmm.
no expansion if I remain in this safe place. So yeah, I can go through my entire life in the safe way that I'm living, and get to the end and say, oh yeah, that was a good life. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. Or I
Hmm.
can really give myself permission to expand. So like,
Hmm.
what life can I live if I really do the things that I came here to do? Like, I believe in souls. I believe that this is just another journey that I'm in as part of something much bigger, right? And
Hmm.
if I give myself to evolve, if I go through these hardships, if I don't resist these opportunities that this life is giving me to evolve in a more spiritual level, I am going to grow. I'm going to grow in this physical space, but also, I'll get closer and closer to my higher self, to my
Yeah,
divine self.
to who you really are. And I feel like that's why resistance comes into play. It's 'cause it's trying to keep itself, the small self, alive. And I think there's a grieving process in this as well because, um, like that, there would have been resistance within you trying to say, "Oh no, just keep the surf the greats." Like you could keep this going, but it came to a point where you had to let go of that identity. You had to let go of that role, and you had to move on. And there is, I think, grief is there as well. And even with Lucas, like you had to grieve being Lucas's partner, not only grieving Lucas, but you have to grieve your identity as his partner because that also ceases to exist in the way that it once did.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important, right? Especially like when you spend like a year, 2, 5, 10, 15 years with someone, like you start to become an entity, right? It's
Hmm.
there is still a sense of self, but the longer you are with someone, the more of a joint identity you assume. So when that part of you is no longer there, you're like, all right, who am I now, right? And the same goes with a business, right? So, all right, this is the business that I built from the ground up and I had for 10 years. So now, like, I'm exiting. I either sold the business or, I'm closing and I'm pivoting. Who am I really, right? And I think a lot of people go through that. And it doesn't even have to be that involved. Like I see this with some friendships. Like, over the last few years, like I've had to just like renegotiate some friendships that I've had that I've carried for so long that were so important to me, but there were clear things popping up that weren't in alignment with how I'm living right now, with where I am, with how I'm evolving. And I just had to accept that maybe those relationships had run their courses, and I couldn't keep holding on to them the same way that I held. So this is all part of, it's a form of grief, it's a form of letting go, it's a form of surrendering, and it's a form of creating space for other great things to come your way.
And I feel that that's important, creating space for other great things to come your way. You are able, through your grief process, you're able to make that space, that left room for you to begin your coaching business, which is evolved into the Ride In. And I believe you've created space relationally to begin a new relation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of in sitting with that silence, like in going through that process, like there was a lot of letting go of the things that I thought were part of my identity, but they weren't, or not anymore. And once I started to let go of those things and really align with who I was becoming, I started to attract all these new things into my life that are in alignment with who I am right now.
So much wisdom and knowledge shared so far, Antonio, and a lot of this is through learned experience, but also through things shared to you through mentors, helpers, authors met along the path. And I'm sure there's countless. There's a long list. But just being conservative with time, let's just take a moment to acknowledge some of the most impactful ones who've left a notable impact on your life. Who were they, and what did you learn from them that you've incorporated into who you are?
Okay. I think from people I don't know, but who had a big impact. So like one of my favorite authors, Brené Brown, she gave me the power of vulnerability. And my life hasn't been the same. The way I show up everywhere in my life has shifted since I've come across Brené's work. My father has given me the values through which I live my life, my desire to help those around me, to care for those with compassion, to work hard for the things that I want to achieve. Lucas, absolutely. That was still is one of the most inspired people that I've ever met in my life. The guy was just out of this world, and every time I think of him, I just have a big smile on my face, and I have so much gratitude for having lived 14 years next to him, because I have learned so much about myself. But the one thing that I really took away from him is that I can be more than one thing. And that's something that, so he was a surgeon, right? He was a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. And that's a line of work that a lot of people go into it, and they think that once they're in, they're gonna be that one thing until the day they die or when they retire. And he proved to me and a lot of people that that's not true, because he became a surf shop owner. He became a world-renowned underwater photographer. So there were a lot of things that he did that really taught me, like, you can be whoever you are, and you don't need to ask permission to shift who you are whenever you want. And that could happen at many points in your life. The other person, my mindset coach, Susan, she has unlocked so much potential in me. She has helped me unlock so much potential. And she's been such a mentor to me, and she made me believe that I have the power to hold space for those in the same way that she does to me. So everything that I'm doing now, it stems from her, and from her holding that mirror and making me see what I needed to see. And my current partner, Will, he's been a beam of light that has come into my life and into my heart, and he's just shown me what's possible when I do my work and I open myself up to call into my life people who are also going through that process, who are doing their own internal work, and how we can come together from a completely different understanding and from a much higher level. So talking about energetic fields, like he came into my life when I started putting out that energy that I was ready to receive. And we've been together for 3 years now, and the level of growth, of mutual care and respect and understanding that I have with him is something that I have never experienced in my life before. And it's really inspiring. It just shows me, that there's still a lot of people out there, whether they're friends, they're clients, or collaborators, that I'll still be able to relate with, to have this deeper connection with, if I keep showing up in the same way that I'm showing up to this relationship.
Incredible. What blessings to have those individuals in your lives, and so many more. And to me, from my lived experience so far, I believe love is the greatest. What have these individuals and all the other allies, mentors, helpers, customers, clients, everyone you met on the path so far taught you about love? What does that mean to you, Antonio? What does love mean to you?
That is an excellent question. I think the biggest learning about love was that I had to learn to love myself before I could love others. For the longest time, I just had so much love to give, but I feel like my love was coming out of a necessity to fulfill some emotional needs that I hadn't fulfilled. And it wasn't until I really accepted myself, all the imperfect parts of myself that made me who I was, and I learned to love and care for them, that I really started to be able to love people, things, anything around me from a place of truth. So I think love is something that you find within first, and then you give out.
And I think that's so important, is the giving out, of filling our cup full so that it just is flowing out of us in abundance, and so we could be of service, so we can serve others. I feel like that is a great purpose of us all, for our own enrichment, but for the collective, is to serve others. And that's what you're doing so richly in all these seasons of your life, whether as a designer, as an entrepreneur and owner of Surf the Greats, as a partner to Lucas, to Will, as a family member, as a friend, You've been such an exemplary man of service along your hero's journey, and my next question for you is, what have you learned through that lived experience, Antonio, on how to be of best of service to others?
Hmm. Yeah, I think what you touched on in the beginning is something that really resonates. It's having your cup full first. That's something that I have learned for a long time. I gave everything I had to a point of depletion, and
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't sustainable. And I lost a lot of important things in my life because of that, for not putting myself first at times. Um, so now, I think, I serve all of those things, and I'm always available to help the next. But I need to make sure that my cup is full first, and that has become my mantra. And it doesn't come from a place of selfishness or anything. It's just I can give from an empty cup. So I have a lot of self-care routines, a lot of effort that I put into giving stems from preserving myself, and to ensure that I have everything before I give to others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now you're currently giving with others through the ride-in. Why should someone come work with you? What do you have to offer through that service for someone listening? How are you serving through that initiative?
Yeah. So I work with like founders, leaders, key executives, anyone who finds themselves in a position of leadership. Whether you're a startup founder, whether you're the CEO of a mid-sized company, whether you're a key executive, at a big tech company, whether you own a yoga studio, that you have a community, you are a leader, right? And I work with people who are at a pivotal moment, or people who had found success, but somehow they feel like something is missing. That maybe the life that they're living, that success that they found, isn't in full alignment with who they are, or maybe they lost themselves along the way. So I really help them, find their return to who they really are, so that they can lead from a place of self-leadership.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so curious about the name, the ride-in. I'm almost positive it has to do with surfing. So explain what that means, the ride-in.
You know me, a lot of most things in my life have to do with surfing still. So yeah, it has a couple of meanings. So the right end, one, it's diving inwards, right? We're gonna go in and we're gonna really figure out everything that we need to figure out so that we can come out again. And then the right end, it's also, when you're surfing, there's always one more wave, and one more wave. You're exhausted, but the waves are pumping. You're fully connected with yourself, with the present moment, with nature. You're having the time of your life, and then it's that final ride. It's that one wave that you catch all the way into the shore, and you know that you made this life count. So that's what we're working with here.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, thank you so much for all your time, Antonio. It's been like so fun catching back up with you and getting to hear and help you share your story to me and to the audience listening. I have one last question for you, and that is through all the highs and lows that has been your hero's journey thus far, what do you feel has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment, here and now, to share with me and anyone listening in?
Hmm. I think my greatest life lesson has been that I am so resilient. human beings are so resilient. Like we can weather anything and everything, as long as we don't avoid it. You know, I think if I keep avoiding things, nothing good's is gonna come out of that. But I have the capacity to falter. I have the capacity to be face down in the arena, and I have the capacity to pick myself up and become whoever I want to be, become, you know, whatever version of myself I want to be over and over again. So that's my biggest takeaway, and that's what I really hope that our audience here today can take away from this. You can heal whatever you need to heal. You can weather whatever you need to weather, and you can become whoever you want to become. And you can change again and become another person, once and maybe twice again.
Amen to that, brother. Well, again, thank you so much. For anyone wanting to connect with you, they can find you on theridein.com and on Instagram at Antonio Lennert. Anywhere else to send them, and any last closing words?
No, those are pretty good. Yeah, anyone who's listening, if you want to talk to me, send me a DM. Let's connect. I'm always down to connect with good people. And it's been an honor, Derek. Like, it's been so long since we saw each other. I'm so grateful for being here. Thank you for all these questions that you asked me. Really made me think about a lot of things that I've gone through. And it feels good. It feels good to share this, to put this out there. So I really hope our paths cross again, and keep doing what you're doing. These conversations change lives.
Yeah, thank you. Love you, brother. Thank you for joining us.
Fist bump.
Boom. Fist bump. Thank you.